Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to give someone who is just starting out on their coding journey and preparing for this first technical interview a JavaScript mock interview. The video might be a tad bit long, but it's because I'm not editing anything out from the actual interview, but also I'm giving real time feedback right after it and also showing my solution to the coding challenge. So sit back and here it is. Hey guys, I'm here with Celestino today to basically do a mock JavaScript interview. We're gonna ask him some a JavaScript question. And we're gonna see how it goes. So again, this is Celestino. First, let's see if he can give us a quick intro about himself.
Hey guys, my name is Celestino. I recently graduated from Flatiron Software Engineering Program. I did the cohort of June to September 2022. Leasing administrator. I have actually 4 years of experience in the real estate industry, and I'm looking to transition into the tech industry.
Awesome. That's really great. What got you? Guys, kind of curious. What got you into tech to begin with?
I studied computer science when I was in college, and it's always been an interest for me. I got my associates in computer science, and I was looking to go into getting a bachelor's, but because of COVID, it kind of derailed my progression. Um, One thing that I was very worried about was online grading.
Right.
Fun fact: I did physics in my last semester of college, and I received a B minus instead of the A I deserved because my physics professor didn't know how to open a zip file.
Oh man. Oh man. That's you should go back and demand your oh man. All right. So for today, right, we're gonna go do some more coding. We're gonna keep it short in a way. We're gonna focus only on the coding challenge itself, not kind of all the other things that you would see in an interview, like simple questions about experiences, projects, and all that stuff. That could be something for a different video, but for now, we want to see how, basically just want to show you how an actual technical coding interview goes. And again, we're doing JavaScript. Okay, so
Mhm.
today we're going to work on this problem. If you've not seen my video about the pub sub in JavaScript on how to create that, check it out. There's going to be like a link right here. Basically, that difficulty of the problem is going to be similar to this. And so this is what we're going to work on because it's a very common type of problem, right? The difficulty of this question is basically if you're kind of like a junior dev, I would say this is a good on-site interview that takes something to solve within 30 minutes to 45 minutes. For a senior engineer, it's probably going to be given to you as a phone screen, right? And so this kind of just allows someone to kind of have a good gauge on their JavaScript skills in terms of data structures, creating functions, and even classes if the person knows how to use ES6 classes. And that's totally not a requirement at all. All right, so basically I'm gonna read over the prompt here. I'm gonna explain it as much as I can, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Celestino to kind of ask me any questions. He's gonna be coding this live, and I'm gonna act as the interviewer and try to be, guide him to the solution and work together with him on this problem for the next 30 minutes. So, all right, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right, cool. So what we're gonna do here is to create a poll class or function that has the following capabilities. So kind of a big overview. You've probably seen polls before, right? There's a question. There's a bunch of options. You select the options that work for you, right? Like your friends are like, oh, when can we hang out for beer? Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Select all that applies, stuff like that, right? So that's what we're trying to imitate with this JavaScript function. So we want to create a new poll where the first argument is the question, while the rest of the arguments are the options that you can vote on, right? So things to note here is that the first argument will always be the question, and then there could be X or Y amount of arguments passed to it, and those are going to be the options for that poll. All right. And then
Okay.
here are the functionalities that we try to accomplish. So once the poll is created, as you can see here, I now have my poll. You should be able to vote and unvote the options on the poll, right? So the first argument is the name of the voter, right? And the second argument is the option that they are voting or unvoting from. So as you can see in the poll, right, that I created here, which Avengers do you want to meet? I gave it three options, right? So John voted for Iron Man, right? And it basically, there's no feedback here right now, but it says that it should store that John voted for Iron Man, right? There's no actual
Yeah.
result, but we're doing some logic so that the vote kind of persists. Jim votes for Black Widow, right? It should do the same thing, right?
Hmm.
But also in a poll, you sometimes can unvote, right? So here we're implementing that where, hey, Jim now unvotes Black Widow, right? That
Okay.
means that after Jim voted and he changed his mind, he unvotes. So in the actual result, we would see that Jim did not vote for Black Widow, right? Um, so the next function we're gonna create, right? So that's the first two. The
Hmm.
next one is a show function, which basically gives us the current status of the poll, right? So as you can see here, be able to print the current status of the poll. The format should be something like below. So mypoll.show, by calling the show function with no arguments, um, it's gonna print out this. So the first thing it prints out in the first line is the question of the poll, and then below it are every single option, followed by a dash, followed by the people that voted for those options. All right.
Okay.
So those are the three main functions that we want to do here. And then this is kind of like the overall logic we're trying to create. All right.
Okay.
So I'm going
All
to
right.
pause here, hand it over to you, let you kind of parse that on your own time for a little bit, and then let me know if there's anything confusing from that prompt.
Okay. Yeah. Let me look at it over on my side of the screen. I don't know how. All right. Let me just change it a little. I have a smaller screen than you do. Okay. Yeah. Create a poll class function has the following capabilities. Okay. First part is class. So I'm going to create a class. I'm going to name it poll. Poll. Uh, Constructor while we're at it. Okay. Whoop. I made a mistake. Read only property message. The first argument question. Argument is the question. Then the rest of the argument is the options that you vote on. To be, let me just put that as R and uh, create a poll. The first know the question, then the rest of the argument or options you can vote on. Cons.
So one thing I guess like what we can try to solve or figure out here first is your syntax with the class, right? So when
Oh
you
yeah.
create the class, you actually don't put your it's not like a function, so you don't put parentheses right after the class name,
Oh.
because that's the job of the constructor. So the constructor handles all the arguments that's passed into that class, right?
Right. Yeah.
So as you can see, yeah, the error is gone. Also, kind of as a best practice in JavaScript, and I think it's in a lot of other languages as well, is that your
Yeah.
class name should be a capital letter, the first capital letter, the
Yes.
first letter. Yeah.
And my apologies. I'm a bit
No, no,
nervous.
no. That's totally fine. Again, this is we're trying to emulate here, the interview scenario.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Look like first argument is a question, and the rest of the arguments are the options you can vote on. Cons to my poll equals poll. Uh, Okay, be able to vote and unvote options for the poll. Okay, so I'm going to create a class and I'm going to want to vote, unvote. Those are two functions that I should have
Okay.
within. And I'm going to be keeping track of the person's name and the type of Avenger they would like to meet. So probably best way. I mean, so I'm only keeping track of two things. I think I'm going to create an object for this. Uh,
So what do you mean by kind of explain to me what you mean by the object that you're creating? What's going to be stored in that object?
yeah, the object I'm going to store a person's a key will be a person's name, and the value will be the Avenger that they'll like to meet.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
So it'd be a person. So let's say in our example, John and then Iron Man would be the value. And so why did you create a why did you decide on an object for this?
oh, I just for me it just probably easier just to keep track of everyone of all the names that'll be added and the type of Avenger that they'll like to see.
Got it. Okay. So do you foresee any issues with using the name of the person as the key in your
Uh,
object?
pos-
So let's see in the
um,
case of like as we show in the examples here in the printed out, right? Let's
yeah.
say in the case of John, right? Can you visualize for me what does that object look like in terms of key and values? Yeah, involving
Okay.
John. Yeah.
Yes, I see John, Eve, and Black Widow. And with an object, each key has its own value.
Mm-hmm.
And if one value has more than one key, it wouldn't make sense to put it in an object.
Right. At least for that scenario that you described, right? The issue what
Yeah.
we're gonna have there is John is gonna be unique, right? It has to be unique. So if
Mm,
your value is only Iron Man or Black Widow, you cannot technically do that directly, just because of the fact that you can't have two keys that are John, right? Um,
yeah.
yeah. But I think you're on a great start in terms of thinking about okay, you want an object, right? I think it's just about okay, what makes sense to make my keys and what makes sense for values in this object. What and looking at it, looking at the problem set, I guess we know that keys have to be unique. So what makes sense to be unique in this scenario? Um, yeah, what type of
I
data?
guess the Avenger would be unique, and the value could be the user or the person that wants to meet the Avenger.
Okay. So yeah, so we know that
Um,
each option can only appear once, right? So it makes sense to have them as a
yeah.
key. But there could be multiple people voting for that Avenger. So what makes sense to be the value of that key?
Um, to be the value for the key.
Yeah, right. So if this was my
Okay.
object, right? Like I guess looking at this actual scenario right here, right? Like this kind of forms like an ideal data structure for us already. It's just about like what if we pick these things or Iron Man, Captain America, and Black Widow as keys, right? Like what would be
Hmm.
a good? How can we represent things with multiple values or multiple names as its value?
An array.
Sure. So
Oh
you'd have an
no, I'm sorry. It's um, the value should be the names, and I can store the names inside of an array.
exactly. I think that's the right track, right? So it basically kind of looks like this output right here, right? Where the key is the option, right? One Avenger. and then your value is basically a list of names, which is kind of emulates an array, right? Like an array holds a list of things.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay, so I'm going to create an object. Let's go J create space. So an empty object, and it's supposed to have be able to vote and unvote the option. The first argument of the name of the voter and the second argument the options that they are voting and unvoting. Um, the first argument is the name of a voter. Let me just create the vote.
And kind of like for viewers, just as a reminder of the time, we want to kind of do this within 30 minutes. I think right now we are at minute 10.
At 10?
Yes. That's okay. You got plenty.
Yeah. Cannot assign a read-only property of message. Unexpected token. Ran into an error. Cannot assign message object syntax error. Unexpected token.
Kind of as a refresher on like the classes syntax here.
Yeah.
Similar to how you did your constructor, you know how you didn't put the keyword function, the function keyword in it. So same with classes, when you're creating functions inside classes, you don't have to put the function keyword, and that's probably why it's complaining.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna want two functions, vote and unvote. And vote should take the name, and it'll be taking two strings, a name and name with Avenger. All right.
Sure.
Yeah. Voter is the option that they are voting. Yeah, Avenger. My should be stored in the Java voter environment. Okay, so from vote, I will be pushing both of these into an object. My object key will be the Avenger, but the name will be the value. Value should be stored in the array. And before doing that, I should first check to see if I have a object with that Avenger's name. So
Right.
for that, I'm gonna see if I can do a short circuit. Avenger. Not. Check to see. So if it does exist, then I'm just going to push the name of Avenger. Push name, or if it doesn't exist yet, then I'm going If that Avenger doesn't exist yet in the object, I'm just going to add it. Or
Uh,
no, I'm sorry. No, that doesn't make sense.
so I think,
Um,
yeah, I think your logic was first check if object the Avenger exists in the object already,
yeah,
right? If it does, just push the name. Otherwise, what would be the else case in there?
you just want to create the key. You want to create the key and add the name. Um,
Right. So it's kind of like start creating the key and the array and add the name to that.
yeah, and create the array. Oh, I'm sorry. There should be this. Start. Where am I? If it exists, add the name. If doesn't exist, create the object. And create the array. Um, Says push the name, and if it doesn't, create the key. And okay, if it exists, yeah, if it exists, just add the name to it. Push the name to the array. It doesn't exist, and you want to create the key, but you also want to still save the name. Um, uh, object.
So it might be simpler to kind of create a ternary expression here rather than an or um, expression, just so you
Okay,
could it'd be a little clearer on, um, which one is kind of like the condition that you're trying to do.
okay. So object of vendor. All right. If that key exists, then um, exists dot object of vendor and push the name. And if it doesn't exist, then we should create the key.
So you don't need to necessarily create the key, specifically in this scenario. With ternaries, right? You have to assign the value of
Mm,
whatever this expression is into something, right? So I think what you're trying to do here is the this dot object vendor, right? That's the creation of the key in a way.
mm,
So you need it to be equal to this whole expression that you're having.
Vendor equals the name.
Sorry. So I meant like the this dot object vendor equals. That should go at the very beginning of the line.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the this dot object avenger should go to the beginning of the line.
Right. The one that you just wrote at the very end after the colon.
Mm. Oh,
Yes, that should go to the beginning of the line. The very beginning.
what should be the condition?
So yes, so the condition, so ternaries, right? So you actually have to
Yeah.
assign what the result of that ternary into something, right? So what I meant was, I'm gonna help you out a bit on here, right? So this dot object vendor, like this, and then you make it equal to this thing, right? So basically, This is, I think, what you're trying to get to is, uh, this is the question, and then this is the first scenario, right? And then here is the else case, right? So this is what you need to fill in, the slashes that I put in there, right? Because this
Mhm.
dot object vendor allows you to assign what should be, the value of that key, right? So this thing right here already creates that key that you're trying to create, for you. And then
Yeah.
this check in the ternary, the condition is basically saying, oh, does this exist right now, right? So if it does, you're pushing into it. If it doesn't exist, um, what should be its value, right? So you only care about now the value of it rather than like trying to think about creating it, right?
Uh,
So what would be the value that it should hold?
it should hold the name.
The name. Okay. Should it be just the name or an array with the name in it?
An array with the name in it.
Right. So we
Thank you.
basically in kind of in a way initializing that data, right? You have nothing there yet. You want to put,
Yeah.
an array with the first name or the first voter of that poll option in there.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, when you vote, should have the name and the Avenger that they want, and if the object key value exists, then yeah, you want to push the new name into the object, and if that key or that Avenger wasn't selected yet, then you want to create the array for the name, and then could just add on from there.
Right.
Uh, and if they are to unvote, um, unvote, they'll click the name, username, and the Avenger. So as well as taking the same name Avenger, and we're going to for the name and Avenger to unvote them, we would want to go into the object and just remove the name from the array,
That's correct.
from the object's key value. So we would have to this. Let me just write it out. We'll want to go into the object, and go into the array, and then go into the array and remove it. Yeah. So first, we'll go into the object. Object. I'm sorry. Um. Okay. We want to go into the object, select the name, and then remove the name from the array of the key of the value of the key.
Yeah, if it
Um,
helps you, I think a great tip, I do, especially when you have a lot of thoughts going in your head and a lot of steps, right? Feel free to like write them out in comments into like in terms of steps in English, right? And then you can tackle them one by one, right? So the first thing you said you wanted was how can you grab the array, right? Basically from the object, for this specific event, right?
yeah.
And then that's step one. And then, okay, within that array, how can I remove now the name, right? That could be step two or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't have to
Um,
deal with all of those steps in your mind alone. Yeah.
okay. Step one, have to go into the object. Step two, select the name or the key, better. Uh, remove value from array. Select the key and then remove the name, and then return the new updated array. Yeah, that's subjects for return. Okay, so how to
And so
unvote.
just to update on time, we're at like minute 20 right now. But no, just you try not to. Hopefully, it doesn't add too much pressure. Yeah,
Yeah, for some reason, I'm just super nervous for some reason,
yeah,
but
that's totally
that's
fine.
okay. Yeah. So I guess we should first check to see if the name exists in the array. Um, uh, object, me say Avenger. The Avenger. Okay, so yeah, and then the object. I get the key. To see if I want to find the name inside of the array. So I should be looking for the name. So object, key, and then so I'm pointed to an array now. And I believe I could use index of, let's say, name. So I'm gonna store that into a variable. Um, oh, okay.
Okay, so
And that,
remove would be your index that you want to remove from the array. Is that correct?
yeah, and
Okay.
then pop that remove from the array.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Try to remove that item. Yeah.
yeah. So then the key. Uh, actually, I don't think I could use pop this way. Actually,
Right. I remember I think
uh,
pop just always pops. I might be totally wrong about this,
yeah,
but the
it
last item.
yeah.
Yeah. Um.
So all right, I'm pointed to the last index of the array. I'm pointed to the name, and I just want to remove that name now.
Right. Right. So
So
removes kind of holds the index of that name right now. If everything's
yeah,
working as intended, right? So the function you might be looking for is called splice. So splice
yes,
is allows you to take out items and replace them if you desire from an array. So if you type in splice, I believe the sandbox would actually tell you kind of its documentation as well. Oh, you're missing the I.
oh, oh, okay, yeah. I want to, and it's between two things. So I click the one I remove, and I only want to remove one item.
Right, exactly.
I believe, yeah, and then it should on itself fix the array's index. Um,
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like when I use splice, the array indexes. Like I'm not left with like an empty. Um, I'm not left with like if the array is my
Oh, I
container.
see
Once
what
I
you're saying.
remove that,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not like something's there. No, it
right,
fixes itself.
right.
Yeah,
The length of the array actually changes. Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't leave like a hollow space where from the item you remove. Yes.
yeah. Okay. So name and then it's removed, and I think that's about it that I will have to do. Yeah, select it. Go into the object, select the key, remove the key from the array. So the object, the key shouldn't. Yeah, it shouldn't be there anymore. So I guess I want to. I don't need to return anything.
Right.
Um,
The function doesn't have to return anything. It just needs to update the actual data structure or your, how you're keeping track of the votes and stuff like that.
yeah. Um, okay. Oh, I think I just missed something. My poll. Oh, my object's name. Or uh,
Sorry, which one are you looking at right now?
no, I'm looking. Wait, which means Iron Man can. I'll see. All right, yeah. So I guess now it's more of how do I want to print out the names.
Right.
Um,
So that's a different
so
function. Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
Uh, you can call it show. That's
I was gonna say print.
in our test cases
Okay,
or
yeah,
in the
show works.
example. Yeah.
Show. Show. Okay, and it just prints out the object, or it. Bless you. Did you sneeze?
I'm sorry. What?
No, I'm sorry. Did you sneeze?
Oh no,
I thought
no,
I
I
heard you
didn't.
sneeze.
No.
So yeah, I want to print out my object now. I want to print out the key and its values. Um,
So just time
so
wise, we
yeah,
have about 5 minutes left. So
okay. All right, yeah. Okay. So yeah, show is just to print out my names, and it's printed out as the key, a dash, and the names. I'm gonna just well, okay. Print object key print names. Okay. I guess I can. Uh, I'm gonna try a for loop. Um, loop through the object and in the object print out its keys.
right.
Um,
So if I not to cut you off on your train of thought here, but
yeah.
so the first thing we want to print out is the name of the question, basically the question of the poll. How would you print that out? Because I think
Oh,
it
which
will
Avenger do you want to meet? Oh, okay.
exactly.
So
I think this kind of will allow us to actually fix a bug that you have somewhere in your constructor.
okay. Which Avenger do you want to meet? And this will all be. I mean, I could do console log. Uh, I guess two console logs, one for the question and one for the object and its keys.
Right. But remember, the question is the first argument given to you, right, when the poll is being created,
Oh,
right? So it's not hard coded, right? And this is something I was going to bring up later on in terms of variable naming and stuff like that. But how would you, right? Like the poll can have any type of question in it and any number of options in it, right? So that's what I meant by some bug in your constructor is how do you handle that? Like um, you know, the dynamicness or variability in your question and the number of options.
oh, okay. How do I deal with the naming? I mean, I guess I could hard code that into it, the names.
Uh,
Um, no, but that doesn't seem very effective or good practice.
Right. So I
Um,
let's try to like I guess with the remaining time dealing with the constructor, right? Constructor is
yeah.
meant to instantiate or create an object, right? Or that poll, right? If we scroll up, as you can see when I say cons my poll equals poll, right? Or in your case
Mhm.
it would be new poll because it's a class. The first argument I gave is the question, right? So the poll doesn't, is meant to accept the question and then X amount of arguments, right? So that means in your constructor, you should have at least two things in here that you're accepting,
uh,
right? So poll name,
the
right?
question,
Right.
yeah, the full name.
And then how would you kind of, I guess, handle a variable amount of arguments?
I
There's multiple
can use the
ways.
spread operator.
That's correct. Yeah.
But where did I go? Here we go. All right. So,
Right. So that args now represents all the I know basically in a way it's the variable that holds the list of the other arguments that you have, right? Um,
yeah,
cool. And so the way you would save, I guess we can do this as the last thing you can write because we are out of time, and since
yeah.
we want to go over the solution. So how would you save this poll name as a value that you can then use later on in your show function, right? How can you save that in in your constructor?
How can I save my poll name in the constructor? I can use the this um,
Mm-hmm.
button and do the name and assign it to the um, argument.
Perfect. Yep. So now in your show you can at least console log this dot poll name, right? And that logs you the question for that specific poll.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Cool.
And then for args that's coming in, I can also set that to an array. Or
Right. So what you will actually want to do is to uh, pre-populate your object with these args, right? Because the arguments are gonna be the keys in your object, right?
mhm.
Okay. So I'm gonna like officially just kind of end the actual coding part, just to kind of like have a clear cut line of where we ended up in the 30 minutes. But before we go to the solutions, kind of like just first, what do you think? Like, how do you feel?
Yeah. I a bit. I was nervous the entire time. Yeah, I think I just had like a bit of a freeze there, but
Sure.
it was a bit challenging in a sense, like you know, juggling as to when I self study is like doing data structures one day, doing just regular programming another, doing CSS another. It's like how does one know they have enough knowledge on one thing to um, be tested on it, right?
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
you never know how much is enough, and I don't know. I just froze a little once
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
came time to tackle the problem.
Yeah, so I encourage people to definitely do mock interviews with anyone they can, right? Because that's gonna give you kind of like at least remove that like that confidence factor, right? I think the more you do something, right, the more kind of or the less nervous you become as you do it, uh, more often, right? At a lot of times, and so that definitely will at least remove kind of like the nerves and kind of things that might eat up your time, right? Whenever we're coding a
Mhm.
challenge, and so yeah, with this one, I think what we can do is go over kind of like the things that went well, and I think the things that didn't go so well, right? With the whole process on how you approach the problem. And then we can look at what the solution to this problem looks like, which would also be, part of the sandbox. So check out the description later on. You can have a link that with, basically the solutions on how you would solve this. Um, Cool. So I think from the get go, your understanding of the problem, I'm kind of curious because later on you kind of said, "Oh, I didn't realize that," or there was going to be different, but possible different questions and options, right? So was that something
Yeah.
that wasn't, you thought, we're going to have one specific question and answer, or how did that? Yeah, how was your thoughts around that?
I think like once like you showed the problem, my brain just went like, okay, go straight to coding instead of
Gotcha.
like stopping and like, okay, evaluating the problem, think of possible inputs and outputs, then testing like amount of inputs versus a big amount of inputs. What are valid inputs? What should I do if like no, if there are no inputs?
Right.
Um, like there's like a whole process, and my brain just like threw it out the window. It was like,
For sure.
yeah, let's just go solve this problem now. And um, but yeah, that comes with nerves, right? Anyone who's nervous about
Yeah.
anything, they just throw logic is out the window and is run straight forward.
Right. So I think one of the most crucial things, right, I keep telling people is the first thing you should do is not code. The first thing you should do is assume that you have coded it and try to test it, right? And some people might know this as like test driven development and stuff like that. But especially in interviews, this is like super crucial. So a simple trick, especially if they give you this much info in a prompt, right? Some might not even give you this much. Some might just stop here, like create a new poll were the first argument, and then it's up to you to figure out and fill in the blanks and ask them to clarify. But for us,
Mhm.
these are the details that I provided, right? So the first thing I would do is copy paste pretty much kind of like this scenario right here and use that as my test cases, right? So pretty much all of
Mhm.
this, I would copy paste it at the bottom, remove kind of like the comments part of everything. Let's try to do that pretty quick. Oops. All right. This, and this one is going to be the result of my poll.show. Um, and then I'm going to remove this, right? Um, so I'm just going to comment all of this stuff. But this basically becomes your playground now, right? Like you have a test case in a way, right? Something that creates your poll. It accepts an argument, and then you can vote, unvote, right? So this helps you kind of process like, okay, um, you can even test this one by one as you create the functions, right? How your progress is moving forward. So you can add stuff to here, obviously, vote foo with Black Widow, stuff like that, right? Because
Mhm.
that helps you also kind of like get into that mindset of like, oh yeah, there's gonna be no hard coding of questions, right? There could be like the next question could be like, what do you want to eat for dinner or something, right? Pizza, hot dogs, burgers, stuff like that, right? And
Yeah.
that's the point of this problem is we want that flexibility, right? We're creating like a class, like a poll class that can handle all types of polls. Um, and then jumping on to kind of like the next thing is like the constructor, right?
Mhm.
So the thing here is recognizing that yeah, like constructor stands for those initial arguments that are given to you on the poll, right? And so I think the good parts are you knew that you could use the spread operator to accept variable amounts of arguments, so that's great. That's something to keep in mind. A lot of questions like this definitely will throw that at you, like variable amount of arguments, stuff like that. So that's a good one to keep in mind. And then the usage of this, you're I think you're very familiar at least on what this stands for within a class, right? And allows you to kind of save state or it's like kind of like a React analogy, save state, have a data structure that's unique, right, to that class. And then creation of each one of this. So kind of jumping into this one thing that it's good that you kind of wrote the functions you're going to create, right? So that's my next point would be to create, just write a skeleton of the whole class, right? So you created vote and unvote, but you kind of didn't create show yet, but that's totally fine. But my suggestion to people is to just create all those possible functions that you know you're supposed to fill out, so then you're not forget about them later on. um, and then put in the arguments, right? So you put in the arguments properly and all of that. The next step I think you kind of skipped out on would be error checking and error handling in these scenarios, right? For example, here, first, I guess I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, but like, yeah, going back to like how flexible it is, right? Avenger is not gonna be a good name for your variable here. A better one would probably be like option or something, right? Name and then option, meaning option that they're voting for. Um,
Mm.
but we kind of had spent a little of time trying to create this kind of scenario. So if it's easier for you to actually just write it in an if else, do that, right? And also the tip of like writing every single one line by line like this and then filling it up, right? Like go into object. What does it mean to go into an object? What code is that? What does it mean to select the key, right? So write the code right under it, right? That can help you kind of like visualize each step easier. Um, so going back to my thing about error check or error handling, one thing here is that you're just assuming kind of like this Avenger, right, is a valid poll, right? You didn't cross check if it's the part some of the options supplied to you, right? So
Yeah.
someone could put like Vision or Wanda as a value here, and now you have a poll where someone can just create options, right, and vote on it by themselves, right? Although that might be a feature of some polls, right? It's something that we didn't discuss on this one, right?
Yeah.
So similar structure for unvote, right? That's kind of the similar error checking that we're gonna do there. um, yeah, and then pretty much, I think at least from the standpoint of things that you've written here, you created, right? We just want to basically, after you did, let's say you got through your, an initial implementation of show, the next step for that is to run the test cases, right? Run the test statements that you put down below and see if it works as intended.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, what do you think of that? I'm gonna pause there before we jump into kind of like what a solution looks like for this.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Oh, so I mean, like in terms of that the all the the feedback that I gave, all that stuff. What do
Oh,
you think? Um,
yeah. No, I appreciate the feedback. Filling up the holes, filling up the gap of what I left. No, yeah, I can see where I made those mistakes. I should have asked for more clarification of uh, the name. I should have checked to see if the name is one of the options first, and then allow the name to be added, or allow the key to be added to the array, instead of just assuming like, okay, oh, you just want to add like Batman? No, that's or Superman. Okay, this person wants Superman. This person wants Batman. I should have just yes. I think you're right on my on my error handling. I should have checked for that.
yeah, for sure. And so yeah, those are kind of things that would be good to see, especially um, uh, again, those this could be missed easily, right? The first
Yeah.
time you write something, but as you're testing them, it will definitely come up. That's why it's important to test your code, especially when you're interviewing, so that you can see and expect those edge cases or scenarios and see what if your code can handle it. Um, Cool. So what I'm gonna do now is kind of paste the solution, kind of explain that solution, how that works here, and test that solution real quick, and then that's probably kind of like how we're gonna conclude this video. So what I'm gonna do again, you can find the solutions here. I actually created it in two versions, one in a class way and one in a function way. Um, so people who is
Mhm.
not super familiar with classes can look at it as well. And again, like you can create this in one way or the other. So since we work on classes, I think it makes more sense to show it in a class way, right? So
Okay.
here's my solution to this. So I created a class pool constructor. Again, the first argument is a question. The rest of the arguments are a variable amount of options. So I named them question and options. I saved the question because I know I have to print that out later. I created an object called tally, which basically, again, the same structure as your object that you're creating, right? Key are the names of the options or each option, and then the value is an array of names. Another thing, though, that was really crucial here, or a good thing to do, is let's pre-fill our object, right? Because we know there's a set amount of options that we can vote on. And so this becomes like our guide, like, you can't just add any option. So what I did here, and I made a for loop, right? So for every tally, for every option, I made an empty array, meaning for each option, there's currently 0 votes on it, right? There's no names.
Okay.
So that's pretty much it for the constructor. For the vote, we have name and option, right? So whoever's voting and the option they're voting for, I grab so I'm doing it more step by step so it's easier. So I'm grabbing the voters, which is an array, right? So I grab it using this. If voters equals null, return. What does that mean? Voters equals null would mean that this option is not valid, right? Because it cannot be null if this option is a valid option, right? It will return us at the very least an empty array, right? So that's my error checking there. Check that the name doesn't exist in the array first. And that's actually another error checking, right? If Jim somehow votes for Captain America twice, it should only count as 1, right? So if voters.index of name is less than 0, meaning this person voting is not anywhere in the array yet, right? Less than 0, basically because index of returns a negative number, -1 to be exact. If it cannot find that item, then we just push the item, and that's it. For unvote, right? Same idea, same error checking we're doing. And then kind of similar to your approach, right? The remove, right? You need a remove index. So we look for it. We check to see, though, one thing that I added extra here, if the name exists in the array before moving it, right? So because there's no point in removing something that's not there, right? So if the index is greater than -1, we splice the array. Okay. And then how do we do the show functionality? Well, basically each line is just a console log, right? At very simple. So, and with the same idea, you were going to do a for loop, right? So I console log the question. And then for const option in the actual tally object, I basically grab the array of names, right? And I joined them, right? Because it's an array, I turned it into a string joined by a comma, and then I log it, right? So I log the option dash the voter list. And so this creates that log. So I'm gonna go and copy this real quick, put that in our index.js. I'm gonna just comment all of this out, put that there. I'm gonna now open my console. Sorry, it's like lagging on the screen share. See this, right? Okay, so let's see if this actually worked as intended. So John voted for Iron Man, and Bob voted for Iron Man, and Bob tried to vote for Iron Man again, right? So I'm kind of like checking that, right? That Iron Man shouldn't have 2 Bobs. And then Ron voted for Captain America, and then Jim voted for Black Widow. So that's the first kind of set of print out here, right? So Iron Man has votes from John and Bob. Sure, that's what we expected. Captain America has vote for Ron, and Jim is at Black Widow. And then the second show is after I did an unvote. As you can see here, so I removed Jim from Black Widow. As you can see, the result is pretty much the same, except that Black Widow has 0 people or names on its list. Cool.
Mm.
Yeah. Any questions about the whole implementation, testing, and all that stuff?
Um, for I can't think of too much off the top of my head, but where can I find this code in case I wanted to study and review it so I could um, compare
Yeah,
it
for
to what I
sure.
did?
So in the video description, you should be able to find a link to this code sandbox that we worked on today. Again, it would contain two solutions: the class and the function, which is basically 90% the same. The difference is we're creating the other one without the class capabilities of ES6. Um, yeah. And so
Okay.
I'm curious,
Wow,
like,
that's
if we go do this like 2 weeks from now, I'm sure you're gonna ace it, right?
yeah. I think I feel more. I think I'll be much better in 2 3 weeks. I think I just got really nervous about it, and like I've been studying data structures, lead code problems for like past 2 months, and like I have a whole process, and then as soon as I like came to this, it was just thrown out the window. Like um yeah, I think 2 3 weeks I'll be a lot better than what I
Oh,
did today.
right. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm sure like the amount of stuff you gotta study, right? Especially like it's your first time trying to get into tech. I'm sure there's gonna be like a ton of things to catch up on. But yeah, I tell everyone, don't be discouraged. It's gonna be hard in the beginning, but um, you know, sooner or later you'll get there. And like as long as you keep making progress. Thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. And again, the link to the coding question and the solution is down below in the description. Also, the link to my email and LinkedIn is down there if you're interested in doing a mock interview with me as well. Again, don't forget to comment your thoughts about this video and if you want to see more of these. All right, till next time.